Greetings everybody, this is Marcus Toole and I am in my yard and orchard. It is November 29th, day after Thanksgiving, so happy belated Thanksgiving everybody. And it is the year 2024. And the tree in the foreground is the one that I've been calling Whimsy. It's a plum tree. It's actually a seedling of the Robusto plum. And this particular tree, the fruit quality on it hasn't been what I'd hoped it would be. And the tree has had trunk issues from the very outset. So I think I'm going to pull this tree out and replace it with another strain. I don't know, I'm going to add 2 to 3 strains to the orchard. For sure, I plan to add Ruby Queen and a Spring Satin Plumcot to the orchard, and I might add Mariposa. If I add Mariposa, this is where I will put the Mariposa. I haven't decided on that. Otherwise, most likely Ruby Queen will go into this spot. I'm actually going to use for grafting in this sucker. This is a NC McKibben. As you can see, it's got several large stems coming up. Depending on how much root I get from that may actually end up with 2 different grafts in 2 different locations. Otherwise, I'll do several grafts in one location. I'll just, move it from there, 10 feet over to where this Whimsy is located, pretty close. I won't put it in exactly the same spot. It'll be pretty close though. Where this tree is, it is too close to a grafted tree. This is a Segundo plum on a Mariana rootstock. And the Segundo, I grafted this spring. Segundo is a hybrid Chickasaw and Asian plum hybrid. The tree's kind of lopsided because a deer got to it and munched off the branches on the right side and left the branches on the left before I got around to protecting it. Of course, we're late enough in the season, the deer aren't going to do that much damage to it this time, unless, of course, they scrape their antlers on it. Hopefully they won't be comfortable enough in the yard to do that, but you never know with deer. This is a Shiro grafted onto NC McKibben. This particular sucker came up in a decent spot. It looks like it's too close to the original tree, but it's really not. That really long branch there is actually going to come off, and this tree properly pruned, they can be side by side just fine. And I will be making this tree a little bit smaller than it currently is. As time goes by, each pruning season, I cut it back by about 1/3. So we're slowly getting it down to a manageable size. The issue with it being as big as it is that it's too tall, for one thing. It's just hard to get to the fruit that's in the top of it. This spring, what I'm going to do, this tree, when I originally planted it, it was an NC McKibben, and I grafted into half of it a Robusto, and because I was just checking out NC McKibben, which is a Chickasaw cultivar strain, and ended up deciding that as a fruit tree, NC McKibben isn't that good. Number one, the plums are very susceptible to brown rot, and number two, they just aren't that tasty. And so, but as a rootstock, it is exceptional. Look at what a nice, big, strong tree it is. So I'm actually, this spring, I've already cut it way back, but this spring I'm going to actually saw off the NC McKibben. You see where my foot is. It's going to come off right about there. And then this is just going to be a Robusto. It's going to be a leaning Robusto, but I think that would be fine. And I'll probably be able to get the tree to sprout out and kind of get another big limb going to the northwest over time. All right, well, let's continue the tour. Right here we have on the right here, this little tree here that's kind of bright green, that is a wild Chickasaw plum, a late blooming one that I planted there. And then a N.C. McKibben sucker popped up right next to it. You can tell the difference. The N.C. McKibben's a little bit, you know, it's beginning to show signs of going dormant, and the leaves are bigger. And the color of the stem, the N.C. McKibben's kind of a more of a brown, tan brown, whereas the wild type is much darker. And anyhow, the N.C. McKibben is going to be moved. I'm going to actually use that for another grafting project that's not far away. I'll mention it when we get to it. As moving right along, see right next to the house, there's a N.C. McKibben sucker popping up there. That tree will be moved and used as rootstock. Over here, this is a black ruby, which I have grafted into N.C. McKibben. This was a sucker that popped up. Notice that there's a lot of worked fresh dirt here. I actually brought that in. This area here, there was a big pine tree at one time, and I had it removed, and parts of the stump remain underground and are just rotting out, and so the land keeps kind of subsiding as the tree rots, and so I keep adding dirt to fill in the holes that form. This tree, this strain of plum is very vertically oriented. In fact, when you look at the comments of other growers, that's one of the big comments about it, is that it has too narrow a profile. And so I'm going to be pruning this quite a bit, as well as using spreaders to try to spread out these branches and to try to force this into more of a vase-shaped tree. So a lot of work's going to be done on this, but all of this, I mean, this tree is about 8 feet plus tall, and this is all for 1 year's growth, you know, of the grafted tree on the N.C. McKibben. I really like N.C. McKibben as a rootstock because it really results in a vigorously growing tree. Next, I'm going to talk about two pear trees. One is over here next to the Robusto plum. This is my LeConte pear. I had a really bad bout of fire blight in my orchard last year, not this past growing season, but last year, 2023 growing season, and had to cut this back very severely in order to get rid of the fire blight. And so I have a lot of very vigorous growth this year. I summer pruned it aggressively this summer to kind of control it, and still will have to do a pretty heavy pruning this spring. It has some bloom buds forming on it. I mean, here's an example of one that's coming along. It will bloom some this spring, or at least try to, but a lot of it's new growth that won't bloom. So hopefully we'll get a few LeConte pears this year. Really didn't do much this year, you know, in terms of fruit because of all the new growth. But maybe next year we'll get some. 2 years from now should be a good year. Over here we have a persimmon tree, which I'm actually going to remove. I mentioned that sucker that I had a grafting project for. I'm going to actually put that plum sucker here, and I'm going to graft in a Ruby Queen in this spot. I'd like to have Ruby Queen plum. I like persimmons. I mean, I love persimmons. I like them as much as I do plums. But the issue is this tree hasn't been super productive. It drops its fruit every year, and I actually can make money off of plums. I'm not convinced I'll ever make enough persimmons to make any money. So I'm going to put a plum tree there. I think Ruby Queen would be a more useful thing to have there. This tree here is a Tennessee pear. I did a review of Tennessee as a pear strain this summer, and so I say look at that video if you want to know more about it. This is a hybrid pear with a lot of the characteristics of an Asian pear. In fact, its pollen parent is a Hosui, which is an Asian type pear. I actually think, as far as this part of Georgia is concerned, if you want a pear tree that has Asian plum fruit characteristics, this is the best one of the group to do, just because of its fire blight resistance. This has handled the fire blight pressure, and especially in 2023 when I had such a terrible outbreak of fire blight. And this tree was right next to a tree that died. Over where that plum tree was a pear tree that just turned black and died. And it and Tennessee were in full bloom at the time. And the fruit on Tennessee got blighted from it, but the tree was damaged, but I was able to manage it. And so I'm a believer that Tennessee is suitable for our climate. Here we have a Savannah pear. Savannah pear, I've had two, and I am convinced that it may be the best of the European pears in terms of flavor for our climate, but very slow maturing. So very much the jury is still out on whether Savannah pear will be productive enough to mess with or not. We won't know this year. It doesn't look like it's going to bloom this spring. Maybe next year. Who knows? So, coming over here, we have a fig tree. This is where we have blueberry bushes and huckleberry bushes in this part of the orchard. This is a rabbit-eye blueberry bush and huckleberry bushes. I won't say too much about them right now. Right here, we have the Tennessee pear, my Tennessee pear tree. It's one of my bigger pear trees. It's got to be pruned some. It's getting so tall that the squirrels can go back and forth between it and the pecan tree, and once they figure that out, well, I won't, they won't let me have any pears out of this tree. So I'm going to cut it back so that they can't do that so easily. If I could figure out a way to reach that branch to get it down, I would love to do that too. Tennessee pear is a very sweet pear and has a lot of astringency until they are very, 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 very ripe. And it also has a thick skin. And the other issue with it, I barely get enough chilling hours for it to be productive here. And in some years it kind of blooms and spits and spats. It's also, I could say, another thing I say about it is that it's slow maturing. Looks like it's going to bloom profusely this coming year though. But that is provided we get enough chilling hours for it to do so. Next to it, we have Southern Bartlett. Now, Southern Bartlett is for sure staged up to bloom. You can really tell the buds are fat this year. So it's going to bloom good. It did not bloom last spring. It's kind of an every other year bloomer. And I think it's because it overcrops. Even though the last time it had a crop, I really thinned the heck out of the pears. But it still ended up overcropping. And I'm going to plan to be even more vigorous with thinning the pears this year, in the hopes that it will, not only would I get higher quality pears, but that it will be an every year cropper instead of an every other year cropper. What I can say about Southern Bartlett, I mean, some people really rave about it. Um, I mean, it's productive when it's productive. That's for darn sure. But you know, if you let it overcrop, the pears are tasteless. And but even when if you get if you're really thin, the pears are sweet, but they're very watery. And it's supposed to be a soft pear, but if you let the fruit soften up, even if you do it right, bring it inside and cool, it's so soft and so watery. I'm not a fan of it as a soft pear. When it doesn't overcrop, they're pretty good to be eaten, just off the tree while they're still crunchy. I like them that way better than I do with them softened up. Now, some people, if you like a really watery pear, then that may well be the variety for you. But and I'm going to have tons of cyan this year. By the way, I do sell pear cyan and plum cyan for those who want to have some of my strains. I'm going to do this video in two parts. So this will be the last one for this first part. This is a Southern King pear, and it produced a big crop last year, and I really can't tell if these are bloom buds coming on or not. I think they are. If I'm correct, and this one, and I remember last year not really being able to tell, and that they fatten up in later in the season than a lot of pears do. Where you can really tell the difference between the buds that will have blooms in them and those that won't. I think this tree's going to bloom pretty good this year. It had a big crop last year, so I was wondering. And this is, as far as the soft pears are concerned, this is probably my favorite of the bunch in my yard. Flavor-wise, maybe I like the Savannah Bear better, but since I've only had two of them, in terms of one that really produces, this I think is the best. And it's also got good fire blight resistance. It's done really well. If I could just have one or two varieties of pear trees, as far as a mid-season blooming soft pear, this is probably my favorite of the bunch. All right, well, let's we're kind of in the side yard. Before we start talking, go any further, I should wrap up this video. So it is November 29th, and this is the first of a series of two videos, I think. There might be three, but I think it will be two. And so I'll end it here. So just look for another video on YouTube where we continue the tour.